Hello everybody, Larry Young here again with another segment of OLaMan Living Life with Purity. And today I want to talk about a fellow by the name of Walt Kelly. And Walt Kelly was a gentleman who was a cartoonist and satirist that got his start back in the 1940s when the Cold War was going on in our country. And Walt Kelly had a way of shedding light on the dark topics that nobody wanted to talk about. And this is where satire can be used very, very effectively in trying to uncover unjust situations going on in the world, absolute lies, or people's subordinate agendas to try to come in from underneath a pillar of our society, try to undermine it so they can take it down. We all see this going on around us right now. But Walt Kelly was probably most known for a certain just one-panel cartoon that he did, and it got sent to the editorial pages off the comic strip because the newspaper editors thought it was just too tough to be considered as a cartoon item, so they had to move it to the editorial page where satire could be talked about and things like that. So this one frame I'll show right here, this was a cartoon that Walt Kelly put out basically to try to show the hypocrisy of the environmentalists that was going on in the 60s and 70s. These people talked a big game, but they always left a mess wherever they went. We've seen this even recently with our college protests, our BLM protests of, after 2020, when that all happened when Biden came in and then the streets got taken over, people were killed, billions of dollars in damages were done, but nobody's really being held accountable on that. Why? Well, because the government and the people who are enforcing these things don't understand the words that the enemy is us. And they're enabling the enemy to do its work right here underneath us to subordinate that pillar that we built here, which is hopefully societal peace, which has been completely upended. People want to talk about racism being systemic and things like that. You know what? I grew up in it. I grew up in the 1960s, and I grew up in a mixed neighborhood, albeit mostly was white, but there was a lot of black and Hispanics moving into the area, which was great. We all had a great time together. I mean, as kids, we were just kids and playing. None of us cared what color the other kid was or what their families did for a living or any of that stuff. I mean, most of the kids moving into my neighborhood, their parents were all professional types, and they were kind of leading the neighborhood as far as their professional degrees and things like this that they were coming in with. They were moving in, moving up, and I was one of the poor kids in that regard. So I just find it hilarious that people now want to say that there's this systemic racism. I mean, they're really only seeing one point on the star. They're not seeing the others that are so beautiful and go so deep to touch us in here that is going on with these stars of influence and things like that we should be looking for. We should always be looking for the good, the positive, and the beautiful, not the negative, the ugly, and the things that separate us and tear things apart. Like I'd said before in previous segments, God by his nature is good, and goodness comes from God. The devil by his nature is evil, and he's looking to destroy and deconstruct and tear things down. So look at what's going on in our world right now, see whose influence is winning, and what we have to do to stem this tide. We have to remember that we have met the enemy and he is us. So we have to self-examine a lot of things that are going on and where we may have failed also along the way by not acting, not standing up, not saying something, letting things go. Say, oh, well, he knows what he's doing. He's in charge and all like that. I've got to go see what I got to make for dinner tonight. These are things that we need to act on. We need to be hearing the alarms going off when they're happening all around us. Now, in May of 2023, there was a representative out of the great state of Texas by the name of Lance Gooden. And Mr. Gooden stood up before Congress, and he shone the light on NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and the amount of money that they've been taking in, and the lack of reporting and being able to account for the amount of dollars that they've taken in. And one of the groups that he asked directly for an accounting of where the money has gone was a group called Catholic Charities. Now, Catholic Charities does a lot of good work. I think they also get into doing things that they really don't have business being in. But I think the business that they're in is money and power in a lot of things that are going on. Now, we all know about the wave of immigrants coming into our country in large groups, large waves, large gestures that they want to get videoed and show meaning and importance to these things, and a sense of urgency that these things need to be taken care of. Well, every person who walks across that border right now and is given, $2,000 debit card, a cell phone, health, everything, plane tickets to wherever they want to go in the country, these types of things. This is all organized. And it's not the U.S. government that's doing it. It's the U.S. government that's paying for it, and that's us. But what they're doing is they're shedding all this money to these different NGOs, and what they're having them do is organize these immigrant waves in other countries, put them on planes, put them on buses, get them to a drop-off destination where they can walk, the last mile or so across the border. If you look at these people coming across, you would think that if you had walked across several countries and had such hardship along the way, you would not have your hair cut, you would not have your clothes be clean, you would not have shoes that weren't torn apart and ratty. These are things that we don't see the signs of people having suffered hardships coming across. Now, there may be instances, that's fine, but by and large, the millions of people who have been coming across have not really suffered in the way that the media wants to make it sound. Now, the people who are doing the organizing, like I said, are folks like Catholic Charities, and I think the one was Southwest Missions and others. But right now, we're in 2023, Representative Gooden was asking for an accounting of where the over $5 billion had gone that the NGO under the name of Catholic Charities have been given by the U.S. government in participating states to do this work. Now, they're not out going and fixing buildings and doing repairs or putting kids in schools or building schools and things like that with this money. No, they're going down to South American countries and other points south of the border and organizing these people to come in, all under the mantle of we're doing God's work. Well, you might be doing God's work, but I think you're also working against what we've set up before and tried to lay out the groundwork for, that I firmly believe that this country, these United States of America, was a project under the guidance and hopeful tutelage of Our Lady. She has been here all along. I think that this United States attempt at trying to create a better world is being challenged right now, and I don't think that people, and especially folks in the churches, are standing up for it. They're laying down, they're looking the other way, they're talking about not enforcing policies that they've had on their books for years, and none of them will use these things, and I'm talking about excommunication. They think of it as, we have to be nice to these folks, but in the meantime, these folks that you're being nice to are people like Biden and Pelosi and other people of great influence who are going around and throwing around the I'm a good Catholic brand when all they're doing is basically lying and causing more and more problem because you have more confused people saying, well, they're not going after Pelosi and Biden, it must be a reason, it must be okay. No. I'll give you 9 billion reasons now why they're not going after Biden and Pelosi, because right now at the last figurative number that I've been able to dig up, the Catholic Church as an NGO has taken in over $9 billion, and they don't have an accounting for it. By the same token, folks out in the state of California have gone through about $20 billion for their homeless out there, and the people out there running that program can't say where the money went. So there's problems all around. There's secular. There's our church problems. They've come to this intersectionality, as people want to talk about today. There's been an intersection of these things. And as I said before in a previous podcast, the intersection of the church and the state really began back with the Council of Trent back at 500 years ago. And at that time, the church and the churches eventually sided themselves with the needs of the government and made themselves as co-optive sort of operators in this thing. And the word for it now is NGO, non-governmental offices or organizations. So we've got problems out there. We need to know where this money is going and why it's going there and why it's being used to create people to come into the country who you don't know who they are. They're just doing body counts. Get on the bus, get on the plane. We need to have numbers so we can keep getting our next draw from the government. We have to stand up for these things, because if the bishops aren't saying something, the people in the pews aren't going to say anything. And right now you're getting fewer and fewer people in the pews because a lot of people are saying, what's the point? You know, I give, and still they don't listen, and they give what I give to somebody else who's going to come in and basically undermine the pillars of our society here by their numbers and their lack of participation in the great experiment that Our Lady set out here. When you have non-participants and people who are coming in and dragging down the system, there's a typical response like we should be like cutting the weight loose and letting it go so it can float on its own and do its own thing. We can't keep supporting these things that are coming in to the detriment of the health of the greater body. Now, people say, oh, the bishops are really strong in this thing. We got Robert Barron, he talks about this stuff all the time. Yeah, but he doesn't do anything. We've got other bishops who are shutting down universities, with transgender stuff. No. We had a situation like that in South Bend, Indiana with St. Mary's University back earlier this year. Was going to allow, it's an all-girls school for those who don't know, and a Catholic institution, but they were going to allow transgenders in as part of their next class and to start taking registrations from these folks. Well, several days went by, and then finally Bishop Kevin Rhodes in Fort Wayne came out with a statement saying it was, basically a poor decision. Oh, I hope they, correct themselves and something, gets in tune with what the Catholic belief system is. What did the university do? Nothing. The university finally took action after the benefactors, the dad brains, raised up and said, no way. You're not doing that. Not with my little girl, not with the money I'm paying. No way are you going to let men come into this university, pose as women like my little girl, and create an unsafe space for her. So it wasn't because of the bishop's direction and authority on things that these nuns up in South Bend changed the pace. It was because the money and the power that was going to go with that was going to be taken away. That's when they did something. And so a lot of people think that Bishop Rhodes was the guy who shut him down. It was tough with him and all like that. No, he really wasn't. He was the beneficiary of dad brains standing up and doing the right thing. So hopefully this won't happen again. But the question needs to be asked, why did it happen in the first place? It happened in the first place because the bishop and the bishops are not taking a firm stand. If these people running this university had been in contact with the bishop and his understanding of things and his policies on things, they would never have even considered allowing transgenders in. So the problem that I have is that why was anything even need to be spoken? If these people are operating as a Catholic university and looking to go that way with their registrations, something happened way back before in the mixing of the ingredients for this pudding that they're put together. They should never have even considered it if they were under proper direction and tutelage from the bishop. So the bishops need to stand up. They need to be more direct about what it is, and they need to take action. They just have to. They're just sitting back and not taking these actions. They're saying, oh, we're going to pray on it, we're going to pray on it, and all like that. In the meantime, more people are getting hurt. And they say, well, we're going to pray for them. You know, they've kicked the can down the road an awful lot. You need to stop kicking the can. And you need to start taking some action because time is running out, folks. I'm sorry. Time is running out. We need to be forceful. We need to be strong with our feather strokes. And saying no and objecting to things is not a bad thing. It's what you're supposed to do. We were told about this by Archbishop Fulton Sheen, that it's our job as the faithful to keep our priests and our bishops in line because they will not correct themselves. They will wait for somebody else to do it. They act like the people many times that created the mess in the Pogo comic strip that I showed you there. They're talking about one thing, but then leaving a huge mess in their wake. And that's what's happening here with all these migrants coming in. I'm sure many of them have pitiful stories, but I'm also sure that many of them don't. They're only here to take advantage of a nice situation that's going on in free money, which we're all paying for in the form of an inflation tax right now and more. Lack of jobs. Most of the jobs that have been given away and filled in the last 3 years have been basically government-funded jobs. They're not in the private sector so generally, but most of these are federal jobs that have been created for this type of event that they've created under themselves. So we need the dad brain to step back in, the guy who comes in and says, enough of this crap, clean your room, you're grounded for 2 weeks. You know, we're going to start off with a fresh set of circumstances here, and you're going to follow the rules. So we do need to look in the mirror a bit here and see what's going on, and don't keep making excuses for bad policies and bad actors, claiming that they have the virtue, they have the high moral ground on things. They may think they do, but I think in reality they haven't gotten the wisdom that is needed for this. And I think a lot of these priests and bishops who we are finding troubles with these days are the guys who were grown up by this, what I would call systemic brainwashing that's been going on in our public school systems. It started clear back in 1915. I'll talk about that. And the guy who was on the charge of that movement in 1915 was a guy who ended up being Archbishop John Knoll here in this Fort Wayne South Bend diocese. And I'll talk about him and what his reaction was when he found out what was going to be going on in our public school system and how he took action at that time. And he used his own money. He didn't get government money to do it. He used his own money to fund this operation. We'll talk about how the Sunday Visitor came to be. A lot of you folks know that publication, but they don't know how it came to be and what its intention was. So we'll talk about that. Great story coming up on that. But right now, the Catholic Charities isn't the only NGO that's taking money and doing these things. There's lots of others out there. They're paying their directors, $500,000 to $1.5 million a year. So that's a lot of money to be glad-handed to somebody for doing subversive work. So we have to ask, where is the money coming from, and why did you spend it there when there's other projects right here in this country that need to be taken care of? So questions, need answers. It's been a year since Representative Gooden asked for this information. Still no response. So I believe it's on his calendar to go back to the floor again and demand answers from these folks. And he's not just after Catholic Charities, he's after all of them, because there's been so many billions of dollars shed on these organizations, and we're paying for it right now every single day. So we're going to get through this. It's going to be tough. The real trouble spots are going to be coming on our streets this summer and into fall. It's going to be very, very, very contentious. Very contentious. So you need to know who you are, where you stand on these things. Be the strong, stable figure inside the snow globe. Don't get concerned about all the things going on around you. Know who you are, know where you're going, stay on pace with that. So we'll get through this. So in the meantime, I love you, and I'll be back.